baptized into this movement. It caused an enormous fracture within early Christianity over the issue of whether it were necessary for followers of Jesus to keep the whole of the Torah.
Right.
Because they were the group that insisted on a Torah-centric understanding of the new faith, there's an internal reason for vilifying Pharisees inside Christianity.
I'll get you in 1 second. I think that dealing here was such a... You're dealing initially with a group, Christianity, which was a very tiny minority, and it's playing for attraction, and playing for visibility, and playing for survival. And, they're viewing the world consciously or subconsciously through a survival lens. And with all that goes with that type of situation. I think I just want to say that for the context. Right. And another thing for the context, I think outsiders to Judaism tend to view it as sort of like internally harmonious movement, yeah. But historically, it's an ongoing rumble.
Right, that's exactly the point. The whole basic Talmudic disputation, you talk about certain fractions, for example, in that rabbinic movement, still, there's a concept of elu ve'elu, divrei Chaim, either side, but it's not a wholesale rejection of the law. It has to be based on and within the context of laws and standards. As Christianity moved along, it seems from its beginnings, it became more and more antinomian in the sense that it more and more rejected first not only the biblical, but obviously rabbinic laws, but then went on to a point where, quite frankly, it did reject wholesale basically all of the laws that are embodied both in the Torah and in the Talmud and some rabbinic interpretations of these laws as well, and totally and wholesalely rejected and discarded all of the legal attributes or aspects of Judaism.
I just want to, except for the Hebrew Bible. That is to say that even in its dispute about application of the law, it maintained the notion that there was a disclosure of the law within the Hebrew Bible, which they came to call the Old Testament, because mostly they read it in Greek, that they accepted as being revealed from God. And very often, especially from the 2nd century, during the 2nd century, for example, in the Epistle of Barnabas, it was maintained that all of the Torah given to Israel up until the moment when Israel revolted in the wilderness in Exodus 32 should be understood as the Torah in the sense that God intended. And after that point, God has responded to the rebellion of Israel. And therefore, it is necessary to put that in an ancillary position. I just give the Epistle of Barnabas as one example of the way in which, predominantly, when Christians dealt with the question of the Torah, they relativized it, but they did not reject. The one thinker who wished entirely to reject the Torah, Marcion, also during the 2nd century, was himself regarded as a heretic within Catholic Christianity. Of course, that itself had its own impact, as you can very clearly see, I think, in the library of Gnostic writings at Nag Hammadi, where there is clearly a view among many of those documents that the God of the Hebrew Bible is a false God, and that all the claims of the Torah should be rejected.
Well, would you say that there's a correspondence between, chronologically, between the development of the later Gospels and later thought and the rejection, increasing rejection of Torah and rabbinic law, and is that perhaps tied to the notion of messiahship, or the idea that basically only one Am HaNivchar, one chosen people, and therefore this chosen people has now been superseded by the followers of Jesus, because he, according to Christian thought, is the Redeemer and Savior, and therefore all of the laws have been superseded and need only be applied in a moral or ethical way as opposed to a strictly legalistic.
Just 1 second. Dr. Gary, I just want you to please define 2 terms that you're using, so not the whole audience is not necessarily academic audience. One is hermeneutic principles and those antinomian. Can you just give a clear definition?
Yes.
Maybe give an example how you use the word.
Hermeneutics, vis-a-vis rabbinic interpretation of the law, has to do with certain set principles by which one can interpret biblical passages in order to derive concrete laws and observance and so on. And one can't just apply the law or come up with law without strictly adhering to these principles of interpretation. The other is antinomianism in the sense that Judaism, as I said, is a legal, rational ethos. It's based on law. It doesn't sound very sexy, but that's what it is. The spirituality of Judaism derives from the observance of the laws and the rituals and so on. But at the end of the day, it's based on law. And antinomianism, the way I would use it in this context, is rejection of the law, is flaunting of legal
antinomianism you're using as rejection of the law.
Right.
Rejection of Jewish law.
Jewish law.
And can you possibly give us, the audience, an example of a one or two hermeneutic principles?
Okay, well there are actually 13 principles by which the law can be interpreted.
Right.
One is by comparing phrases that have a common denominator, so as to speak, one by repetition of words, and so on. But
it's like 13 principles of redaction.
A redaction
of the Mishnah or the Torah, whatever.
Well, it's in essence the way that Torah text is taken and then redacted and understood and brought into this legal context.
Okay. Just to be clear to the audience, in the morning prayers actually it's repeated.
Right.
It's repeated, even though when teaching Talmud, it's often not necessarily, unfortunately, laid out that way from the get-go, right? But that's generally what's happening. These 13 principles of redaction, which is called the hermeneutic principles, is how the Torah is being redacted into Jewish law. Okay, fair enough? So we're all agreed on the terminology. And everybody should be careful. If you send in a phrase which you think the lay audience might not understand, just consider explaining it how you define it. Of course, we don't want to lose the audience. Fair enough? Okay. So moving right along. I think the whole deal of supersession, which you're pressing, or something on such a whole complex subject. These are all complex subjects. And the development of Christianity is such a complex subject. And development of rabbinic Judaism is such a complex subject. And they're more...
Do we want to do supersession too?
No, I'm saying...
No, as an explanation. I mean, you're
right. You should get what you're saying. Good point. And so you have so many of these moving, morphing targets. Mm-hmm. And coursing right through the first century, of course, which I'm talking about, of course, coursing through the second, third, and fourth century also. It's so dicey to make an ironclad generalization. Well, it's a very, very general generalization, all right? And again, if you're looking through this matter through a political lens, or a cultural lens, or a religious lens, or a spiritual lens, you're going to tend to see all the players a little differently. Okay, who would like to define supersessionism? Who would like to define it correct? The term.
I would say that supersession refers to the concept, which I would define from Justin Martyr in the 2nd century, a writer predominantly active in Rome, who held that when the scriptures of Israel referred to Israel, they were talking about believers in Jesus. That is, they are actually the target of the revelation throughout the Torah, and more especially in the prophets. So if you claim, that's right. If you claim that this is the real target of revelation, the implication is therefore that those whom everyone else calls Israel is, in some sense, not the actual, not the intended Israel. And what Justin Martyr was doing is actually rooted already in the New Testament, where Paul talks about those who believe in Jesus as being, as he calls it, the Israel of God.
Fair enough. I think technically, in terms of succession, could be any group superseding a prior group, just like the Pharisees superseding the Sadducees. But generally, what the way this term is used is the ideological assertion or claim, hypothesis that Christianity superseded Judaism. Just for the record.
It's just as, of course, the argument later on is whether Islam superseded both Judaism and Christianity.
Fair enough.
Exactly. And I think this helps us to understand why Christianity has had particular difficulties with Islam, because in effect, a similar logic is being reflected back.
Right. Fair enough.
And to an extent as well, in certain circles, also with the state of Israel. Since that seems to deny the supersession, it seems to fly in the face of the theological aspect. The Jews are indeed able to return to their homeland and reestablish themselves, and to the extent that it's a matter of biblical prophecy or secular movement at this point, I'm not even going to go there.
Right, without having first to convert.
But Christianity, and yet nevertheless, in some ways you could say that we are in a messianic era, Jewishly, without a specific Messiah, since there is Jewish government. Right,
but then I think when I ask the question, I think it's also key to understanding this is what exactly is the role that Messianism plays in Judaism? The fact of the matter is...
that's a whole other separate seminar.
Those ties in together. The fact of the matter is that Judaism, quite frankly, doesn't make this the focal point of its religious thought.
Sure. Right. Well, this is the old sweater rule. You know, when you start pulling one string, you unravel.
Right, especially this topic.
And when you're dealing with Judaism, you have to recognize that there is no such thing as one thing that's unrelated to everything else.
Right.
It's just everything.
It's seamless web.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Although not necessarily a monolithic web, as you alluded to before.
It sounds like a good book title, you know.
Yeah.
Sweater rule. Well, okay, so. You see, from my perspective, if Jesus was Orthodox Jewish, it's really a major, it changes everything, you know, because then the issue gets refocused, meaning, what are we dealing with here? You know, was he a Neo-Lubavitch Rebbe figure, you know, or was he...
I don't think Neo would be quite.
You know, meaning was he? You know, in other words, was he within that genre? Was he in that basic genre that hinting or implying that he's the Messiah, without necessarily exactly precisely saying it, and accumulating a movement upon his lifetime and his death?
I don't know if it's an appropriate analogy. I love Nietzsche. Now, Nietzsche wrote, quite frankly, while he was still alive or lucid, you know, they're going to take everything I wrote